All right, hi everyone. My name is Hashemi. I'm a content creator for Jetset Times. This is a show where we discuss topics in the travel industry that aren't nearly talked about enough. And today we're tackling female solo travel. And there's no better person to answer, and there's no better person to interview than our own Nadia Cho. She's not only a world traveler, she actually runs the blog International Woman of Mystery. So Nadia, thank you so much for coming and talking to me, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
So just kind of jumping like right into it, you've obviously been all over the world and a lot of your traveling has actually been alone. So how did you kind of get into that?
Well, yeah, I'm coming up on almost 8 years of traveling almost full time now. So my story basically starts at, the first time I studied abroad when I was 19, the summer after my sophomore year. I spent a month in Spain, in Cantabria in the north, and I loved it. And I knew that I was going to move to Spain after college, no matter what. And I actually came back to Spain. I studied abroad in Madrid for my last semester of senior year and just ended up staying. I worked as an English teaching assistant for 2 years. And then I felt like, I was in Spain for about 2.5 years and wanted to see somewhere else. So then I jumped to Thailand and Bali, where I was living in Bali for about 3 months. And then I ran out of money and had to move back to LA for a short time. And then after a couple of years working there, I've got the travel bug again and then did the work holiday visa in Sydney, Australia. And yeah, whenever I did all of these big moves, I had to do it alone because, early on, I realized that if I want to see the world and go to all the places that I want to go, I realized that if I had to wait for someone to come with me, then I would never get anywhere and I would never see all the things that I wanted to see. So, beginning from that first moment, I decided to come to Spain. I was like, look, you know what? Nobody else feels like coming with me and I don't feel like waiting. So I'm just going to go. And ever since then, that's basically how it's been, where sometimes someone will come with me if it's possible. But I noticed that for a lot of quote unquote normal people, taking an international trip or any kind of trip is a very big undertaking for them. Much more so than for me, where I'm very used to just hopping on a flight and going wherever and going to different countries. So it's just kind of I don't like having to coordinate and wait for someone else to figure this whole thing out and making it a big deal. So whenever I feel like going somewhere, I'm just going to book a ticket and go and, explore and figure it out.
I love that. And you obviously have your blog, International Woman of Mystery. What kind of inspired you to start that?
I just started that this year, actually. It started in March of 2021, and it's a project that I had been thinking of for a really long time, just because I had a backlog of so much travel content, especially photography from my years of traveling all over the world, from so many different countries. And of course, a lot of that gets contributed to Jetset Times, which I love. But I kind of wanted to create my own thing. And I also wanted to feature just stories of women because, the biggest thing that I'm grateful for is that throughout my travels, I've met really amazing individuals, and a lot of them are women. And I think every woman is just so unique and so special. I know that each woman out there is just working really hard to create the lives that they really want to and live the life that feels most authentic to them. And I think every single one of those people should be celebrated. And I think each person's story is so interesting and uplifting for anyone else to read. So that's kind of what my blog focuses on, where it's called International Women of Mystery, because, I feel like a woman of mystery who's always just kind of showing up in different places and, just meeting different people and popping into people's lives. And I kind of ran with that concept, and I wanted to introduce these really amazing women that I met and just kind of celebrate and highlight and promote whatever they're doing to build their best lives.
Mm-hmm. So it seems like you have so much experience with all these women and you've met so many different people. Do you think that there is a societal standard for female solo travelers? Do you think that there's a stereotype of them? Do you think that they're not able to do certain things because of their gender? Or do you think that none of that exists and that it's just everyone's kind of allowed to be who they are where they are?
I don't think there's one prototype of female solo traveler. That's something that I know just based on meeting so many different people. Like, we're definitely not like a monolith, like, every single one of us is different. Of course, we're all united by this, huge desire to see the world and, experience things, which is why, I'm sure a lot of female solo travelers feel the same way like me, where they don't want to wait till someone comes with them and they just can't wait to get out there and see things. But of course, there are very real life consequences and safety precautions that women need to take into consideration. And, when I'm planning my travels, like, there are definitely certain destinations that I wouldn't go to alone as a woman, just based on, like, things I read in current events, or just based on anecdotes from, people that I know who've been there. So certain places, for example, India, I hear might not be the best place for women to travel around alone for safety reasons and things. Or, like, certain Arab countries might not be super welcoming to women who are just going around alone. So those are definitely things that I take into consideration, because of course, like, my safety is very important to me. And also, I was just having this experience where I'm planning a road trip through southern Italy for the next 2 weeks, and I was looking for Airbnbs. And, since I'm going to be staying alone, like, I have to be very vigilant about the types of places that I book. So, for example, if a place like has no reviews and it doesn't really look very reputable, or it doesn't seem like a lot of people have like been there and can like vouch for it, then I'm not going to feel very comfortable staying there, because I don't know what the situation is going to be with the owner, or what the location is like. So I definitely think there are things that, they're not necessarily obstacles, but things that you need to consider when you're traveling alone as a female.
Obviously, safety for any traveler is such a big issue. Has there ever been a time or a country that you felt really unsafe, and how did you handle that situation?
Far, honestly, because I am, I do my homework and I research, and, I try not to, I go to most destinations alone, and, I do think I have a lot less fear than a lot of people. So, there are certain countries that I would probably go with a travel partner. And, anywhere that I do go alone, like, I make sure I talk to a lot of other female travelers who have been there, like, either alone or with other females, and make sure that it's okay. So, to be honest, like, I haven't really traveled to a country where I felt super unsafe. But, there have been times, for example, when I was actually traveling through Europe, doing the Euro trip with my sister on the train. And we got on a train in Italy, and we were alone in one of the carriages. And then this man came on, and he sat down like right diagonally from us and stared right at us. And then he started masturbating like right there. And of course, we felt extremely unsafe and had to get off the train and take the next train. So things like that, at least for me, I feel very fortunate that, that was a one-time thing, that anything like that happened. And typically, I keep my eyes open. I'm not going to like walk around dark alleys alone. If I can kind of like limit my like outings at night when I'm alone to like big streets or like busy areas, I will. So yeah, for the most part, I have never really felt my safety threatened. But there are like certain circumstances that are unfortunate that happen.
Yeah. Well, I'm really glad to hear that you've been safe for most of your travels. I would hope that that's the same situation for most people. But I think obviously talking about sexual harassment and kind of female solo traveling, it would be a little bit naive to ignore that conversation. Although it is a man's problem, women still horribly have to deal with things like that. So, do you have any advice for how you deal with situations like that, or kind of how to make sure you're staying as safe as possible when you're traveling to all these places?
Well, one, I think the very like practical precautions that, any solo traveler, but especially female solo traveler should take is, my mom always makes me send her the address and phone number of wherever I'm staying. So just like make sure that like there's always people, whether, they're with you or like not in the country, that know where you are. Like always like give someone your itinerary so that in case something does happen, like they have an idea of where you were last, and they can kind of like, figure out where where you are based on that. And other than that, I mean, I do think like just common sense helps the most. For example, like if you're walking around a city that you don't know, like stick to well lit streets with a lot of people. Like don't be going to anywhere with like dark alleys. Which sounds like so ridiculous and stereotypical, but like when you're
Mhm.
somewhere alone, like make sure you're like in a place with a
Mhm.
lot of people, that you're not just like wandering in like a foreign place where like you might not know where you're going. And I mean, in terms of strangers, like I am like a big supporter of talking to new people because I genuinely do believe that most people that you're going to meet out in the world actually do have like good intentions and they're nice people. Like most of the
Mhm.
people that I meet on the road, if not all people, are like really nice and they're actually like willing to help you. Um, so, I do support like making friends and talking to people. And I don't really think it's like my, authority to tell women like, because sometimes I'll meet people and like hook up with them too. And it's actually something that like happens pretty often. But in the case that happens, I always also take the extra precaution of like texting your friend, like, hey, I'm about to like go to this person's house, like it's in this district, try to find out what the address is and just always kind of make sure that someone knows where you are.
You were kind of talking about meeting new people, and kind of on a lighter note, but a similar note. When, say, you're at a restaurant or a bar, how do you kind of know that you can trust someone? Like, are there any signs to know that, oh, like this is someone I kind of might want to hang around? This is someone that I might want to hang out with when I'm in this country? Like, is there anything you can look for to make yourself feel a little more comfortable?
I mean, no, I don't think there's anything that I look for because, I think it might be naive, but I think generally I do trust people unless they give me a reason to not. And yeah, like most people that I'll meet in like a bar or restaurant, like they're nice, we'll chat. If the conversation gets really interesting and deep and we want to keep hanging out, then like we'll keep hanging out. And I think it's just more like generally an issue of whether like I think that person is like fun to hang out with or not. And that's kind of how like I'll judge whether I want to like stay in touch with them. Typically, I'll swap Instagrams with people and I have like tons of people like that where I've just like met in passing, but now we kind of like know what the other person's doing and we can kind of keep in touch. So yeah, I think it's just like a matter of, if you vibe with someone, just like keep in touch with them, keep hanging out with them, and you just never know where it's going to go.
I love that. I think it's so important to try and meet as many people as you can on the road. So it's refreshing to hear that you're so open to that opportunity. And kind of on a similar note, but a little different, I think so many people are so apprehensive about eating alone when they're traveling alone because
Yeah.
I think it's such a weird societal insecurity to like be alone in public. So, how do you handle that situation? And do you
Oh
have
my
any like
God.
fun anecdotes from a restaurant or anything?
No, oh my God. I love eating alone. Like, I
Mhm.
truly do. Like, I love treating myself to a really
Mhm.
good meal at a restaurant. Because think about it this way, it's like, is there anyone else that you would rather pay and treat to this meal than yourself? And you don't even have to pay for anybody else? Like, no, like, and it's going to be amazing. So I think if you're eating good food, honestly, who cares if you're alone? Like, it's going to be fabulous and you're going to have a great time. And, I eat alone all the time. I guess like one practical tip that I'll always give is like, I have a Kindle. So, like, always bring a book, always have like a really long book that you're going to read when you go on any trip, because that book is basically going to be your companion and your date. And I typically think that like a book is a better date than like most dates I'll have at a restaurant because, they're interesting and they don't talk back. But, in terms of like the stigma, like I totally know what you mean because I have friends who are like, oh my God, it's like so embarrassing to eat alone. Like people are going to judge you and think you're sad. But literally, who cares? Like, as long as you're going to a restaurant that serves really good food, like, I don't even think it's something that you need to think about. And I like going to bars alone. Like, for some reason, I really like being that girl who's like, sipping wine alone at the bar and, just reading. And honestly, I think it is when you're alone that you meet more people. Like that's something that I've learned where like when you're with your friends or family, like you're only going to be talking and like hanging out with your family. But it's when you're alone that like other people might approach you, or you might be more open to approaching other people. And, sometimes when I'm sitting at the bar by myself, like I do get self-conscious. Like I'm not going to lie, because I am alone, aware that I am all alone and like people can see me. But honestly, like who cares? And it is like typically those times when you're sitting by yourself that like someone might approach you, or you might open up conversation with someone new.
When you go to all these places alone, do you actually meet a lot of other solo travelers, or is it more groups that you're meeting?
It depends where you're going. So, before, when I was staying in hostels a lot more often in my early 20s, then yeah, like I was meeting tons of like solo travelers, or tons of just like people, like friend groups traveling around. And it just like depends where you go. Because if you go to like a big nightlife destination with a lot of young people, then like, yeah, you might, meet the same thing, like groups of friends or like locals. But it kind of just depends on what you're doing. Where if I'm just like eating at restaurants by myself or just like sightseeing and stuff, I typically just stay to myself and I don't meet too many people. And if I do feel like meeting people, that's when like I'll go out to the bar and like go somewhere like a bit more social and stuff.
And I think that another huge concern for people that are solo traveling is the idea of getting lonely, even when you're alone. And I think there's a huge difference between being alone and getting lonely. So have you ever like had to struggle with feeling lonely, or has there ever been a country you felt pretty isolated in?
There are definitely trips when, yeah, like I have felt very lonely because I've taken so many solo trips at this point. And most of the time, like I don't care, I don't even think about it. I'm just like, I just went to Costa Brava by myself for a week last month and I absolutely loved it. And I think for new solo travelers, like my advice is always to like go somewhere with tons of things to do. So it's either like a huge city or just like a place where there's like so much to see where you can really like pack in your itinerary and you don't even need to think about it. So, I went to Rome by myself and it was actually Christmas. So that was like a trip where I realized, okay, like Rome, there's like a million things to do and I can like see everything that I want to. So that trip was actually great because like, I didn't feel alone. And it was totally fun. And then I even started taking myself on like more isolated places. So I went to Langkawi alone, which is like an island. And, even Costa Brava, it's like a beachside thing. So, like even then, just as long as you have a lot of things to do, so when I'm in like an island, I'll rent a motorbike and just like go around all the islands, see all the beaches, do all the stuff. And I guess like at night is typically when you're like winding down, you might feel like a little lonely. And of course, like I've dealt with that too before. But, I think my love for traveling and my excitement for being somewhere new always trumps all that. And in the end, like just being there and the experience is worth like so much more than like, the loneliness that I might feel for a second.
That's like so good to hear that you just can take that in stride. I love that. And do you ever have to do research before you're going to a country? Say, maybe they have a more modest dress code or anything?
So I think as a general rule in terms of dress code, I do think that if you're a girl who's traveling alone, I think it might be better if you kind of dress a bit more low key. But you know what, like if you want to dress to the nines, that's totally fine. Like nobody's gonna judge you. But at least for me, like I feel like, especially if I am going to a place, for example, like a Muslim country. So when I was in Malaysia, in Langkawi by myself, it's really chill. It's an island and there's tons of tourists. So it's not like anybody really judges you because they know like you're from outside. But typically places like that, like I will dress like pretty low key where there's just like a t-shirt and shorts. Like I'm not wearing like a ball gown or a club dress when I'm like going around by myself. But in certain destinations, like if I'm out in a city, like I might do that. So, in a sense, like in a nutshell, yes, like I will do research. Typically, my research just consists of like talking to people who've been there also and just asking, like, hey, how was it? Do you think I'll be safe? Is there anything that I shouldn't do? Um, but Yeah, I do think like as a female solo traveler, it's typically smarter if you like don't attract too much attention onto yourself, because just being a girl alone, like you are going to attract attention, just that fact by itself. So like I typically like to like dress, very comfortable, low key when I'm like going around.
On kind of the topic of research, say like you're going to a country that you might have to be a little more cautious as a woman. How do you kind of keep an open mind about that situation and push yourself to go there because you want to experience that place?
Um, that's tricky. Typically I'm not the type to be like, I'm just not gonna go there. Like I think like
Hmm.
if it's somewhere that I really want to see, then like I am gonna go. And the only place that I can like think of, for example, I went to Jakarta, and Indonesia is a Muslim country, and also Malaysia. And, I always keep an open mind because, like I said, I do think like most people that I run into are willing to help me and they're very nice. And most people are like good people. And I think it's just kind of like, it just depends on the person and what your comfort and risk level is. So for example, like in the daytime, I feel a lot more comfortable, like just going wherever and like talking to people, interacting with people. But I think like at night, if you are in a place where like you kind of need to be careful, like I might, be really careful about where I'm going out to eat or if I go out at all. Typically, I haven't like been anywhere where I need to limit my nighttime outings where I'm like, because I'm so scared. But I do think it just comes down to, common sense, like keep your eyes open, don't go wandering into anywhere that you might get lost. And I think if people approach you, like you just kind of like, it's good to stay open, but just feel out the vibe. And if anyone like is giving you a really creepy, bad vibe, just walk away. Like you don't need to interact with that person. Like it's totally fine to remove yourself from a situation where you're uncomfortable. And I think that's like something that's very important to know as a female solo traveler.
Hmm. I love that. I think it's so important to not have to make yourself uncomfortable at the expense of like other people.
Of
Um,
course.
but now we're kind of going to do a fire round question. So I just have a couple. You get like 10 seconds to answer each. So, what are your five favorite places you've been to?
Okay, so I love Madrid. It's my favorite city. I love Bali. I love Lisboa. And I do love LA. It's where I'm from. It is still such a good city. And I loved Hong Kong.
Hmm. And do you have any least favorite places?
I did not enjoy Jakarta. I hate Barcelona. I'm very Madridista. I lived in Huelva in Andalusia for a year in Spain. I don't love it. And I actually can't think of anywhere else that I hate it. It's just like those three places that I didn't really love.
Well, I'm glad that you've liked most places that you've been to.
Yeah.
But which countries have the best food?
Hong Kong, Spain, Portugal, I mean, the US, and Australia.
And then what's kind of the most unique cocktail or dish that you've tried when you've traveled?
Oh, that one's hard because, I do get to talk to a lot of chefs and bartenders. You know what? I just went to Copenhagen and I went to Kado, which is a Nordic, like innovative Nordic cuisine restaurant. They let me try ants and pine cones. So that was definitely like the most unique thing I've tried.
And did you like it?
I love the pine cone because it was like
Interesting.
pickled. So it was like sweet and crunchy. I thought it was really good. The
I
ants
can't
were
even
fine.
imagine a pine cone like that.
So it's not like the hard pine cone that you're picturing. It's not like in the form like we know that's
Oh,
brown.
it's
It's
not like
like
the
very
brown
soft.
packaging.
It's been pickled for a long time. It was actually pink when I ate it. So it was
So
delicious.
like
I really
a
liked it.
pickled onion almost.
Almost, yeah, exactly.
Mm. Oh, well, I
Delicious.
love that. Thank you so much for coming here and talking about your experiences and everything. It seems like you've been so fortunate to experience so many places. And I think everyone out there would like love to have those experiences.
Yeah, Yeah, definitely. And the thing to know is that everybody can have these experiences. Like I know that most people, like I said in the beginning, most people think like taking an international trip is a huge undertaking, but it's really not. And you kind of just need to think about it as a matter of just buying a plane ticket and hopping on a plane. And I definitely think that most people, especially female, should travel alone because if you want to go on like a truly relaxing holiday, you have to go alone. Like at least I have to travel alone if I really want to disconnect and like relax. So I definitely recommend at least like trying it once.
Well, I'm glad that you said that because I think that everyone should be a little more open minded and try new things. And thank you, Nadia, again so much for coming.